The manhunt continues for Gabriel Calixto, who is the suspect in the July murder of 24-year-old Emma Shafer here in Springfield. And I know that the family is still absolutely rocked by what happened, but the stabbing death, just an absolutely horrifying incident. And there are now questions as to why this individual, the suspect, Gabriel Calixto, was out of prison. And apparently this individual had been sentenced to 6 years in prison for a kidnapping charge back in 2018, but that charge was ultimately vacated by a 2020 decision in Madison County where the state's attorney's office had constitutional reasons that gave him credit for time served. Well, KSDK out of St. Louis in the Metro East area, they talked to Calixto's ex-girlfriend, Katie O'Brien, who is the subject of this kidnapping back in 2018 that Calixto was ultimately found guilty of and was supposed to serve 6 years in prison, but didn't. And apparently this individual is reportedly a DACA recipient, as I've seen some people providing me some information. And you've got a statement here from the state's attorney, Tom Hain, down in Madison County, saying our deepest condolences to the family and the loved ones of Emma Shafer. What transpired here is deeply disturbing and upsetting. In October 2020, prior to my administration, this defendant's guilty plea was modified. The reason for the modification is frustratingly unclear, they said. There was no hearing held on the modification, and there's no transcript. The employment of the former assistant state's attorney responsible for this modification terminated in February of 2021. My office will continue to assist the Sangamon County State's Attorney's Office and other authorities in Sangamon County in this manner. So this is a huge story for a local family that is still demanding answers, I'm sure. But even down in the Metro East area, you've got KSDK with this report that they put out talking to Calixto's former girlfriend. And here's some of how that played out.
Been in prison.
I don't sleep at night knowing that he's out there.
Katie O'Brien dated Gabriel Calixto for 3.5 years.
Really wasn't until we broke up that it all went bad.
Following the breakup, O'Brien says Calixto broke into a relative's home and threatened her.
He had brought a knife and had it up against my throat.
She filed a restraining order against Calixto, but O'Brien says a few weeks later, he was waiting for her outside of her house.
And that's when he pulled the gun out and said, I want to talk.
Calixto forced O'Brien to drive to this Fairmont City hotel, where she says he had a mental breakdown.
I didn't know his next move, and saying one thing to one part of him would be right, but to the other is completely wrong. If I hadn't done the exact things I did to get back home, I would have never come home.
In 2018, Calixto was sentenced to 6 years in prison for kidnapping O'Brien.
You hope someone gets better and not worse.
Calixto's sentence was vacated in 2020 by then Madison County State's Attorney Thomas Gibbons' office for constitutional reasons, and he was given credit for time served, though court records note there were factors to extend the term. Should he be in prison right now?
I definitely think he should still be in prison.
Current Madison County State's Attorney Tom Hain told 5 on Your Side that he finds the reasons behind the modification frustratingly unclear, adding that there was no hearing held on the modification and there is no transcript. The employment for the former assistant state's attorney responsible for this modification terminated in February 2021.
To lose someone in the community for something that feels preventable is awful. Turn yourself in. You've done wrong. You know you've done wrong because you've done it before.
And Calixto is still on the loose. And again, that's from KSDK, Metro East St. Louis area, reporting on the former girlfriend of Calixto, who is still on the run. He's possibly in Mexico. You've got U.S. Federal agents even involved trying to track him down. The question again is, I think, pretty well put by one of his other victims in this, O'Brien, who said that he needs to turn himself in, and this could have been preventable. This is something that, in 2018, he was sentenced to 6 years. But you've got a former state's attorney that decided to essentially vacate the conviction based off of what even the current state's attorney down there says is vague and unclear, with no transcript of how that process actually played out. Did it have something to do with Calixto being a DACA recipient, or what's the case there? So again, you've got some alarming questions here that raises the issue of how we could have prevented some things by simply, having individuals be held accountable for their actions instead of for political reasons, or for, you've got a certain, heartstring that's being pulled, or whatever the case may be. It's led to this suspect being wanted on the run after allegedly stabbing a local individual with a family that loved her, with a community of activists. Doesn't matter what side of the political aisle you're on. A community that is rocked by this murder that happened back in July. So we'll do what we can to obviously delve a little bit deeper into that particular case. But again, the Madison County State's Attorney saying that the reason for the modification of the conviction there is frustratingly unclear, and there was no hearing held on the modification, and there's no transcript. But that assistant state's attorney that worked down in Madison County no longer works there. And the new administration, of course, does not have all the answers on that particular case. All right, it is Springfield's Morning News. I'm Greg Bishop. Speaking of immigration issues, Robert Kennedy Jr. put out a documentary of him traveling to the southern border and seeing not people from South America necessarily. He saw an increased number of people from Asia, from Africa, and elsewhere throughout the entire world pouring into the southern border just a few months ago. And he came to a conclusion I think is important for people to hear. So we'll actually delve into a little bit of an 18-minute documentary that one of the Democratic candidates for president, Robert Kennedy Jr., put out. And I think it's rather eye-opening. So stay tuned for that. It's coming up next here with Springfield's Morning News on 92.7 WMAY. Springfield's News and Talk. So Robert Kennedy Jr., who is running for the Democratic nomination for U.S. president, he released an 18-minute documentary on Twitter. It really just goes right down to the question of what is going on at the southern U.S. border. And he sees it for his own eyes. He takes a documentary crew with him. He interviews a bunch of the professionals that are down on the scene. He sees for himself the multinational origin of a lot of these individuals coming from all across Central America and Southern America. But you've also got individuals coming from Africa and from Asia, and just the scores of people being processed and then ultimately being flown or bused to cities across the country, including the city of Chicago and elsewhere. Manhattan, over in California, a lot of these so-called sanctuary states and cities. So fascinating to see all of that. But one of the conclusions that he comes to is this is big business. This is big business for the criminal cartels and U.S. policies allowing for this level of migration across the southern U.S. border. It's detrimental to public safety, but it's also a big moneymaker for these cartels. And here's just a little bit of the conclusion that Robert Kennedy Jr. has with this documentary he posted on Twitter.
And why do you think this happened?
At the end of the day, this is a business for people on the other side of the border. Billions and billions of dollars every month are earned from transporting people and, in conjunction, drugs across into the United States. And that kind of activity doesn't go away easily.
A 2022 estimates revenue of human trafficking was $13
So
billion.
if you were president of the United States, could you stop this immigration crisis?
Absolutely.
And how would you do it?
If I was president for the day, I would finish the wall. where it makes sense. I don't need 2,000 miles of wall from San Diego to Brownsville, Texas. Mother Nature has done really good in areas of West Texas where you don't need a wall. We need technology to help the agents respond. I have talked about tall fences and wide gates. Tall fences, in my opinion, is a metaphor for keeping this border secure, and the wide gates is continuing this nation of immigrants, as well as a legal pathway for those that seek to enter the United States.
So tall fences but wide gates. And I think a big question that still is up for debate is the issue of the deferred action for childhood arrivals, DACA. And those individuals, should there be more scrutiny on all of that? Obviously, Robert Kennedy is a liberal, a classical liberal, and he says on Twitter, after announcing this documentary, he says that when he's president, he'll, quote, secure the border, which will end the cartel's drug trafficking economy, and he says he will build wide doors for those who wish to enter legally so that the U.S. can continue to be a beacon to the world where diversity and culture makes us great. So again, Robert Kennedy, with this documentary, it's fascinating. If you get a chance, you might want to just take 18 minutes and watch it. He does a deep dive in that short amount of time, and I think really gets to the crux of the issue. 217-629-7970. That's the phone number here with Springfield's Morning News. We'll take a call before the break. Good morning. You're on WMAY, and what's up?
Yes, good morning. I've said it all along that the Democrat Party has thrown Martin Luther King's teachings under the bus, and they have made everyone in this country judge somebody by the color of their skin first. Everything is about race, and that's the problem. It doesn't seem to be any longer about somebody's deeds or the content of their character. There does seem to be a push to just see somebody's lot in life or their future outcomes based off of skin tone, and that's antithetical to the ideas of anti-racism and making sure that we focus on individuals on the content of their character. Appreciate the call. Got to take a break, guys. It's right here with Springfield's Morning News. I'm Greg.